Johnny Cash is one of the most recognized country singers of the 1960s, famously dubbed the Man in Black. He captivated the world with his distinctive style, earning international fame. However, fame and fortune couldn't keep the skeletons in Johnny's closet hidden forever. Shortly before her passing, Johnny's first wife, Vivian Cash, revealed dark truths about Johnny that may shock you. Stay with us as we dive into the life, career, and secrets of Johnny Cash. Early life and career. Johnny Cash was born J.R. Cash on February 26, 1932, in Kingsland, Arkansas, to parents Carrie Clovery and Ray Cash. He was the fourth of 7 children. The story behind Johnny's name is somewhat humorous. His mother wanted to name him John, while his father preferred Ray. They compromised with the initials J.R. However, when Johnny enlisted in the Air Force after high school, he had to adopt the name John R. Cash, as initials were not allowed. Later, when he signed with Sun Records in 1955, he officially became known as Johnny Cash. Johnny's early life was filled with hardship and struggles. When he was 3 years old in 1935, his family moved to Dyess, Arkansas, a New Deal colony created during the Great Depression under President Franklin D. Roosevelt. It was meant to give low-income families the opportunity to work and eventually own the land they worked on. At the age of 5, Johnny began working in the cotton fields alongside his family. During these tough times, Johnny developed a love for singing, as his family would often sing together while working. Unfortunately, his childhood was marred by tragedy. In 1944, Johnny's older brother Jack suffered a terrible accident while working. He was cut nearly in half by an unguarded table saw. Despite fighting for his life for a week, Jack's injuries were too severe, and he passed away. In his autobiography, Johnny shared how he, his mother, and even Jack had a sense of foreboding about that day. His mother had even urged Jack to skip work and go fishing with Johnny instead, but Jack insisted on working since the family needed the money. Jack's death had a profound impact on Johnny, leaving him with a heavy burden of guilt. He often said he looked forward to reuniting with his brother in heaven. Despite these personal losses, Johnny's love for music continued to grow. His childhood was filled with gospel music and the sounds of the radio. His mother and a childhood friend taught him how to play the guitar, and by the age of 12, he was already writing and performing his own songs. While in high school, Johnny sang on a local Arkansas radio station. However, he had to put his music career on hold when the Korean War began, and he enlisted in the Air Force on July 7, 1950. After completing basic training at Lackland Air Force Base and technical training at Brooks Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas, Johnny was assigned to the 12th Radio Squadron Mobile of the U.S. Air Force Security Service in Landsberg, West Germany. While stationed there, he met Vivian Liberto, a beautiful young woman whom he dated briefly before his deployment. During his time overseas, the couple exchanged thousands of letters to stay connected. While serving in Germany, Johnny worked as a Morse code operator, intercepting Soviet transmissions. Interestingly, Johnny was the first American to learn about the death of Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, a story he often shared with his daughter Roseanne. Despite his military duties, Johnny's passion for music never faded. He formed his first band, the Landsberg Barbarians, while stationed abroad, setting the stage for his legendary career in music. On July 3, 1954, Johnny Cash was honorably discharged as a staff sergeant and returned to Texas. During his service, he acquired a distinctive scar on the right side of his jaw, which later sparked speculation about its origin. However, it was the result of surgery to remove a cyst. Shortly after returning home, Johnny married Vivian in San Antonio, at a church where her paternal uncle, Father Franco Liberto, officiated the ceremony. Johnny's career didn't truly begin until he and Vivian moved to Memphis, Tennessee, in 1954. Initially, he sold appliances while studying to become a radio announcer. During this time, he also played music with guitarist Luther Perkins and bassist Marshall Grant, forming the Tennessee Two. In a bold move, Johnny auditioned for Sun Records, hoping to secure a recording contract. He performed gospel songs, but Sam Phillips, the studio's owner, famously declined to record gospel music. While it's rumored that Sam told Johnny to go home and sin, then come back with a song I can sell, Johnny denied this in a 2002 interview. Nevertheless, Johnny won Sam over with his early rockabilly songs. In 1955, Johnny made his first recordings at Sun Records, releasing Hey Porter and Cry 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 in late June. Both songs were successful, but it was Cry 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 that became his first hit, reaching number 1, 14 on the country charts. His fame grew even more with the release of Folsom Prison Blues later that year, showcasing his signature blend of country, folk, and rockabilly. The following year, 1956, brought his breakout hit I Walk the Line, which topped the country charts and crossed over to the pop charts, reaching number 1. 17. These early successes with Sun Records established Johnny as a major force in the music industry. It was around this time he earned the nickname the Man in Black due to his unique style and persona, often dressed in black, which set him apart from other country artists who preferred rhinestones and cowboy boots. By 1958, Johnny had signed with Columbia Records and continued to release hit after hit, including Don't Take Your Guns to Town, 1958, and Ring of Fire, 1963. These songs cemented his status as a country music legend. His live album Johnny Cash at Folsom Prison, released in 1968 and recorded at Folsom State Prison, became one of the most celebrated live albums in music history. Around this time, Johnny launched his own TV show, The Johnny Cash Show, which featured performances by top artists of the era and expanded his public appeal. Johnny's name was on everyone's lips, and he seemed unstoppable. Johnny also showcased his versatility by recording concept albums, such as 1964's Bitter Tears, Ballads of the American Indian, and At San Quentin. In 1969, another live prison recording that produced the hit single, A Boy Named Sue. However, his success was shadowed by personal struggles, particularly his battle with addiction. Despite continuing to produce influential music throughout his career, Johnny's life was deeply affected by his addiction to amphetamines and barbiturates, a common issue among musicians of the era who relied on substances to enhance their performances. His addiction became well known, and it was a miracle that he continued to make music given his struggles. Johnny Cash's remarkable career, marred by addiction and personal turmoil, remains one of the most enduring and complex legacies in the history of country music. Many of these stars have spoken about how coping with lengthy days, exhausting travel schedules, and constant invitations to perform at venues and promotional events without much notice was challenging. In 1966, when I Walk the Line topped the country charts, Johnny Cash was on the verge of a musical journey that would swing between exhilarating highs and devastating lows. His career almost derailed more than once due to his battle with substance addiction. If you're familiar with Johnny's story, you've likely heard about the time he tried to smuggle over 600 amphetamines and nearly 500 tranquilizers across the Mexican border. That stunt got him into serious legal trouble. At one point, Johnny even tried to bribe a police officer to avoid being caught, but instead, he spent the night in jail, where he received a harsh lecture about wasted talent and how his decisions were not only ruining his own life, but also hurting those around him. So, how did his addiction affect his career and personal relationships? In the 2005 movie Walk the Line, Johnny is portrayed as struggling with addiction to illicit substances and alcohol. The film shows him spiraling out of control, getting sloppy with fellow artists while on tour, straining his relationships with both his first and second wives, and distancing himself from his children. His addiction didn't just threaten his career, it was far more destructive than that. He was quoted as saying, "I'm feeling what I'm doing, and the people out there know it. You can't fool them." To his friends, Johnny's behavior during these years was unpredictable, with many joking about his erratic actions, which were clear signs of his deep addiction. His substance use led to car accidents, veering off roads, and even hiding out in caves. He became moody, confused, and difficult to work with. Unfortunately, Johnny's struggle with addiction would last for years. His first wife, Vivian, cited his drug and alcohol abuse as a major reason for their eventual divorce. But that wasn't the full story. Johnny had also become romantically involved with June Carter, a relationship that ultimately contributed to the end of his marriage to Vivian. Johnny met June, the daughter of the famous Maybelle Carter, while touring with the Carter family. After his divorce, Johnny and June grew closer, and they married in 1968. Their tumultuous romance, which inspired the movie Walk the Line, had its share of ups and downs. It is said to have been the spark for Cash's iconic song Ring of Fire, perhaps driven by their fiery passion. Despite everything, Johnny managed to get clean several times throughout his life, but the road to sobriety was anything but easy. He seriously attempted to kick his addiction in the 1970s, and for a time, he succeeded. One significant period came after the birth of his son, John Carter Cash, his only child with June. For 7 years following John's birth, Johnny remained sober, a remarkable achievement that showed his commitment to his family. However, that sobriety wasn't permanent, and the cycle of addiction pulled him back in. Personal challenges didn't help. June herself struggled with compulsive shopping and an addiction to prescription pills, according to their son, John Carter. Yet, their marriage, which lasted 35 years, was a complex mix of turbulence and deep, unconditional love. In a 2007 interview with Reuters, John Carter reflected on his parents' relationship, saying, "My parents' love for each other lasted throughout their whole life. They didn't give up, they accepted each other totally, unconditionally." Even with his struggles, Johnny remained a compassionate, creative, and humble man. His children remember him as a father who, despite being deeply addicted, was also loving. That said, his addiction did take a toll on his family. Johnny's son eventually checked himself into the same rehab facility his father had attended. After his parents passed, he wrote a 2007 book revealing the painful reality of growing up with two parents who battled addiction. In the end, Johnny did manage to overcome his addiction. In his later years, he often spoke about how his faith and relationship with a higher power played a critical role in his recovery. Those who knew him well said he liked to remind people, "You can be redeemed." Johnny Cash's life was defined by personal redemption, a theme that resonates throughout his legacy. His story isn't just about fame and music, but of a man who battled his inner demons and, in the end, found a way to rise above them. One significant chapter in his life involved his tumultuous relationship with his first wife, Vivian Liberto. Their relationship, fraught with challenges from the beginning, provides a glimpse into the personal struggles Johnny faced outside the public eye, including racial backlash against Vivian, Johnny's infidelity, and his eventual marriage to June Carter. There's a lot to unpack about their relationship, so let's dive in. Johnny and Vivian's early days. Vivian shared in her memoir, I Walked the Line, My Life with Johnny, that she first met Johnny on July 18, 1951, at a roller skating rink in San Antonio, Texas. Johnny had asked her to skate with him, though he wasn't the best skater. However, he made up for it by serenading her with a Rosemary Clooney tune playing at the time. A whirlwind romance sparked between the two before Johnny was sent off to Germany with the Air Force. In a romantic gesture, Johnny carved "Johnny Loves Vivian" into a bench along the San Antonio Riverwalk before he left. The two promised to stay in touch, and they did, exchanging love letters that, while filled with affection, also foreshadowed the troubles to come. Johnny's accounts of drinking and his guilt over infidelity became a pattern in their correspondence. When Johnny returned from his military service in July 1954, Vivian and her family gathered at the Cash home in Arkansas to welcome him. On August 7, 1954, they married at St. Anne's Catholic Church in San Antonio. The early days of their marriage seemed promising, but as Johnny's career took off, challenges began to surface. According to Vivian, one pivotal moment that changed everything was Johnny's audition with Sam Phillips at Sun Records. Afterward, he excitedly told her, "Baby, we're cutting a record." At the time, Vivian was pregnant with their first child, Roseanne. With that song, Johnny Cash and his band, the Tennessee Two, became the newest artists signed to Sun Records, joining a roster of legends that included Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Roy Orbison. Johnny and Vivian fondly recalled their friendship with Elvis, describing him as an all-around great guy. However, the pressures of fame began to take their toll. Touring frequently, Johnny was increasingly exposed to attention from female fans. When Vivian asked if he ever felt tempted, Johnny reassured her with the promise, "I walk the line for you." This phrase inspired the hit song "I Walk the Line," which Johnny co-wrote with Vivian while they were driving. Released in the spring of 1956, the song became a #1 hit, just as their second daughter, Kathy, was born. Despite his professional success, Johnny's rising fame put immense strain on their marriage. Vivian felt the impact of Johnny's increasing time away, especially as they moved to California under the guidance of Johnny's new manager, Saul Holiff. According to her memoir, she agreed to the move simply because Johnny wanted it, reflecting that at the time she didn't have much of a voice in decisions. By 1958, they had 3 daughters, and Johnny's career was in full swing. As their family grew, so did Johnny's struggles with alcohol and drug use. Vivian noticed a shift in his behavior. He began to embrace the very things he had once denounced in his love letters as filthy and dirty. The pressures of his growing fame and the constant touring led Johnny down a destructive path. His use of pills and alcohol became more frequent, which only deepened the rift between him and Vivian. Their third daughter, Cindy, recalled that while she only witnessed one fight between her parents, she remembered her mother's constant worry and sleepless nights, hidden from the children. Vivian had hoped that moving to a new home in Casitas Springs in 1961 would help stabilize their family life. Unfortunately, it did not. Johnny's substance abuse continued, and soon infidelity was added to the list of problems. According to Vivian, Johnny's affair with June Carter was the final blow to their marriage. She reflected in her memoir that June was relentless in her pursuit of Johnny, making Vivian feel increasingly cast aside. Left behind to raise their 4 daughters in Ventura, California, Vivian watched as Johnny and June became the king and queen of country music, their romance portrayed by the public as a fairy tale. For years, Vivian was little more than a footnote in Johnny's life, her contribution to his early success largely forgotten or erased from his narrative. In her memoir, however, Vivian finally had the chance to reclaim her story. She offered a deeply personal account of her life with Johnny, one that was both heartbreaking and uplifting. Her narrative serves as a reminder of the often overlooked cost of fame, particularly in a celebrity-obsessed world that focuses on glamorous relationships while neglecting the pain and struggles of those left behind. Vivian revealed that despite everything, she never stopped loving Johnny. She reflects on their life together with bittersweet nostalgia, imagining what their future could have been if circumstances had been different. Johnny's journey from personal demons to redemption is well known, but Vivian's role in that journey is often forgotten. Her memoir shines a light on the sacrifices she made and the hardships she endured, offering a more complete picture of Johnny's life and legacy. If not for the substances and June's intrusion, Vivian recalls in her book how everything began to unravel shortly after they moved to California Springs. Johnny's fame skyrocketed, and he was often on tour with June, leaving Vivian behind to care for their 4 daughters. "If only I could have traveled with him instead of staying here raising the kids, things would have been different," she often confided to her longtime friend, Alice Smith of Ventura. This sentiment was one she expressed repeatedly over the years. Vivian passed away in May 2005 at the age of 71, shortly after completing her manuscript recounting her life with Johnny. Her book serves in many ways as a rebuttal to the 2005 Oscar-winning film Walk the Line, which portrayed Johnny, played by Joaquin Phoenix, and June, played by Reese Witherspoon, in a dreamy love story. In the film, Johnny is shown as the relentless pursuer, and June as the hesitant object of his affection. But Vivian offers a different perspective. She claims it was June who pursued Johnny, recounting a particularly intense backstage confrontation where June allegedly told her, "He will be mine." Vivian's co-author, Anne Sharpstein, noted that this moment encapsulated much of the pain and anger Vivian carried for years. According to Cindy, Vivian's daughter, her mother's account rings true. Once June came into the picture, she was determined to have Dad, and she did everything to make sure of it. Cindy added that June made herself so available that eventually Johnny pursued her back. Vivian's book sheds light on the painful reality of hearing June claim she was raising Johnny's daughters, when it was, in fact, Vivian who had borne the responsibility of parenting them. In addition, she accuses June of enabling Johnny's addictions by supplying him with illegal substances, while struggling with her own demons. From their very first encounter in 1958, Vivian's perception of June was clouded. Her instincts told her that this woman was a danger to her family. Although Vivian could not pinpoint when Johnny's infidelity began, eventually the signs became impossible to ignore. At first, she clung to denial after all. She was the woman Johnny had promised to stay true to, but the cracks started to show. Johnny was spending more time away from home, and whispers from family and bandmates grew louder. Then came the receipts of thousands of dollars spent on lavish gifts for June. Losing her husband to another woman was, as Vivian describes, a degrading and horrible experience. The thought of Johnny loving someone else was almost unbearable. In hindsight, Vivian often wished she had fought harder to save their marriage and reclaim the love they once shared. "I should have been as relentless at saving it as June was at destroying it," she reflects in her book. Yet, despite all the bitterness, Vivian ultimately found it in her heart to forgive June. However, the regret that weighed heaviest on her wasn't about her marriage or even June. It was the anger she carried for so many years. Johnny left without so much as a proper goodbye. Though he eventually apologized to their daughters, he never said those words to Vivian. She would have given anything to hear him say, "I'm sorry." June passed away in May 2003, just 2 years before Vivian's own death. That summer, Vivian visited Johnny in Tennessee and mentioned she was writing a book about their life together. His response? "What took you so long?" The title of her book, suggested by her friends, carried a deep resonance. "You were the one who walked the line," a tribute to her years of raising their 4 daughters while Johnny was absent. Vivian filed for divorce in the summer of 1966, and it was finalized in late 1967. But she was far from the picture of a broken ex-wife. Instead, she threw herself into life in her community with determination. She served 3 terms as president of the Garden Club of San Buenaventura, volunteered at the county hospital, and supported a home for unwed mothers in Los Angeles. Those who knew Vivian, whether closely or in passing, spoke of her with admiration. She was kind, generous, down-to-earth, and socially engaging, a decorating guru and a gracious hostess, always ready with her signature Afghans and homemade treats. Now that we're up to date on Vivian's account of their relationship, let's take a look at some of Johnny Cash's infamous misadventures and how they contributed to his untimely demise. Johnny Cash's legend is as much about his rebellious spirit as it is about his music. His adventures and misadventures around Ventura County only add to his mystique. He was a frequent guest at Lake Casitas, where he claimed to be fishing, though his escapades often overshadowed any fishing he might have done. According to Vivian's book, Johnny wrote his iconic song, "Ring of Fire," during one of these so-called fishing trips. However, his visits to the lake weren't just about casting a line. Johnny was known to party hard, sometimes passing out on his boat after indulging in too many drinks. Randy King, the manager of Lake Casitas Marina, fondly recalled, "He used to come out there, drink too much, and go over the edge." Randy often had to make calls to sort out Johnny's escapades, with someone always coming to fetch him. Cindy remembers those frantic searches vividly, stating, "Mom would pile us all into the car, and we'd have to go look for Dad and bring him home." One memorable incident involved Johnny's penchant for blaring Christmas music from loudspeakers in his yard. Helen Boyd, whose husband Jeffrey was then a sheriff's deputy, was tasked with asking Johnny to tone it down. Johnny was always polite about it, but he sure loved his Christmas music. While these wild exploits only added to Johnny's bad boy image, they were signs of the larger issues plaguing his life: addiction, strained relationships, and the constant tug of fame. Ultimately, these forces led him down a dark path, contributing to his untimely demise. He thought he was spreading cheer, but his music was so loud it thundered down the creek bed. Cindy, Johnny Cash's daughter, laughed as she remembered how devastated her father was when he was asked to stop the music. According to her, Johnny genuinely believed he was doing something nice for the community. Unfortunately, his encounters with the law were not limited to noise complaints. In June 1965, Johnny accidentally started a forest fire near Alder Creek, which would later become known as the Adobe Fire. The blaze raged for a week before being brought under control, and required aerial firefighting efforts. Carl Rivenberg, a U.S. Forest Service officer at the time, was tasked with issuing Johnny a citation for the fire. Rivenberg recalled arriving at the scene to find Johnny's truck camper, affectionately named Jesse, parked on the side of the road. The fire started because of a malfunctioning exhaust pipe on the camper, which ignited nearby grass. When Rivenberg found Johnny, he appeared inebriated and was struggling to walk straight. In a comical attempt to contain the fire, Johnny was using his leather jacket to beat at the flames. In his 1997 autobiography, Johnny recounted the incident with his characteristic bravado, claiming he went to court full of amphetamines and arrogance. He dismissively brushed off the possibility that the fire might have harmed the 44 endangered California condors in the area, stating in his deposition, "I don't give a damn about your yellow buzzards." The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service later clarified that the condors were likely only scared away, not killed. Johnny further claimed to be the first private citizen successfully sued by the federal government for starting a forest fire, though the Forest Service contested this. In the end, Johnny was fined about $125,000, a sum later reduced to $82,000, with insurance companies covering most of the costs. But not all of Johnny's blunders were quite so dramatic. Randy Boswell, who was 16 at the time, recalled a more humorous encounter with the country legend. In the late 1960s, Randy came across a stranded black Cadillac and a stumbling Johnny Cash. Recognizing him from his sponsorship of the local Little League team, Randy gave Johnny a lift to the nearest gas station. Despite his well-known missteps, Johnny's good deeds often went unnoticed. He performed countless benefit shows for local causes, and was, at the very least, a supportive father. Vivian, Johnny's first wife, emphasized this side of him in her book, highlighting the financial support he gave their family and his presence at key moments in their children's lives. Cindy, one of their daughters, fondly recalled joyful Christmas mornings with her father, who once left footprints in the ashes of the fireplace to convince his daughters that Santa had visited. Despite his darker moments, Johnny's family cherished these memories of him as a loving father and husband. Vivian shared that she preferred to remember Johnny as the man who loved his family deeply, even as he battled addiction. For her, the personal memories of Johnny stood apart from the public's image of the troubled outlaw. Johnny passed away on September 12, 2003, just 4 months after the death of his beloved wife, June Carter Cash, from complications related to diabetes. They had met backstage at the Grand Ole Opry in 1956, and their love story remained one of country music's most iconic tales. For all his faults, it's clear that Vivian genuinely loved Johnny. And while he may never have apologized for some of his wrongdoings, there's hope that they have all found eternal peace. Were you aware that Johnny Cash had this side to him? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, click the play button on the video on your screen. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you'll be notified when a new video drops.